When I was in the classroom, I thought dyslexia was something for specialists to understand and not something for me, a first grade teacher with at least 20 students, no teacher's aide, and what felt like a million different things to teach every day. I couldn't possibly understand dyslexia without a whole lot of study and an extra degree. And to be honest, even when I got my master's degree in curriculum and instruction, I still didn't know what dyslexia was. Unfortunately, as I know now, understanding dyslexia would have given me important insights to some students I had who were really struggling with reading. Whether I was teaching first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, or fifth grade, all grades that I taught during my career as a classroom teacher. If you're new here, my name is Anna Geiger. I'm the author of Reach All Readers, host of the Reach All Readers podcast, and creator of the Reach All Readers Plus membership. And I'm here to help you bridge the gap between what we know from research and what you do in your classroom every day. Today, we're talking about dyslexia, specifically 12 dyslexia myths that we're going to bust. These myths can really get in the way of identifying kids who need help and getting them that help as early as possible. There are a lot of misconceptions out there, so let's work through them. Myth number 1 is that people with dyslexia see letters and words backward. This seems to be the most persistent myth, and it does real damage because if teachers or parents don't see their children reading letters or words backwards, they might assume there is no dyslexia, when that's not a sign of dyslexia at all. When it comes to writing letters backward, that's pretty normal up through first grade. When there are persistent reversals, let's say second grade and beyond, it's worth a closer look. But that's something normal in the early grades, and we certainly don't expect kids to see words and letters backwards. And that's because dyslexia is not a visual disorder. It typically involves problems with phonological and morphological processing, meaning it affects how the brain processes the sounds and structure of language. So reversed letters, not the defining feature, and their absence doesn't rule anything out. Myth number 2 is that dyslexia is rare. That was certainly something I believed, so therefore it wasn't something I needed to give a lot of thought to as a regular classroom teacher. Estimates vary, but some researchers suggest that as many as 15% of the population has dyslexia. It's on a continuum, so it could be mild, it could be severe. Some kids struggle a little, others struggle significantly, but this is not a small or unusual thing. Myth number 3 is that dyslexia is caused by laziness. Here's what Jan Hasbrouck writes in her book, Conquering Dyslexia. Students with dyslexia use far more brain areas than their neurotypical peers when performing a simple language task. They are not working less hard, they're probably working the hardest in the room. Telling them to work harder isn't going to solve the problem. Myth number 4 is that dyslexia is a sign of below average intelligence. People with dyslexia do not necessarily have a low IQ, and people with a high IQ can most certainly have dyslexia. Myth number 5 is dyslexia is much more common in boys than in girls. Actually, boys and girls are affected at nearly the same rate. What's often different is how it tends to show up. Boys with dyslexia may be more likely to act out or become disruptive, whereas girls with dyslexia may be more likely to internalize, stay quiet, and try to hide what's hard. The teacher may just see them as someone who's doing their best, working hard, without realizing that there's something underlying that we need to take a closer look at and work to intervene. Myth number 6 is that dyslexia only affects English speakers, but dyslexia crosses language and countries. It shows up differently depending on the type of language, but the underlying difference in how the brain processes language is not an English-only phenomenon. Myth number 7 is that dyslexia is a result of parents not reading enough to their children at home. I cringe when I think back to my classroom teaching. I remember one specific child who was a wonderful kid. He paid so close attention to the read-alouds. He was always participating in class, but reading was a real struggle for him, and his parents were concerned. I didn't know what dyslexia was at the time, and basically what I told them was read to him more. Have him practice his leveled pattern books more. Reading more to kids has countless benefits, and certainly when students can read, reading more leads to more knowledge, more vocabulary. But telling parents whose kids are struggling with reading that they need to read to them more is not going to solve the problem because dyslexia is caused by a difference in how the brain works. It also unfairly puts guilt on parents who think that their child's reading problems are their fault. Read to your children, yes, but don't read to them with this idea that it will solve their reading problems. Myth number 8, people with dyslexia always have exceptional gifts in other areas. This might be the other prominent myth about dyslexia. And we want it to be true, right? But evidence doesn't support this as a rule. And this myth can actually be harmful. I saw an interview once where someone was talking about how everyone says people with dyslexia are really good at different things, and I don't really have anything special I'm really good at. So now I think, I have dyslexia and I'm bad at having dyslexia. When students hear that dyslexia comes with a set of special strengths and they don't see them, it adds another layer of discouragement to an already hard situation. I don't think we have to be afraid to call dyslexia what it is, a learning disability. I know some people like to call it a learning difference, but I feel that it's important to be honest with our words. It is a learning disability. It is going to make reading and spelling harder. The good news is there's lots we can do about it. Myth number 9 is that an fMRI scan can diagnose dyslexia. That would be really handy, wouldn't it? But it can't diagnose dyslexia, certainly not at the individual level. We can look at a bunch of different scans and summarize or get a general idea of what a brain with dyslexia looks like, but we can't do this at the individual level. Dyslexia is diagnosed through a comprehensive set of assessments, not a brain scan. Myth number 10 is that dyslexia can't be identified until 3rd grade. It's the old wait and see approach, and it's a horrible practice, and I confess that as a teacher, I recommended that to parents. Let's just wait and see, give them time to catch up. That's a horrible idea because the earlier we intervene, the better. And actually, the brain is more plastic. In other words, it's easy to rewire the circuits before 3rd grade. If we wait until 3rd grade, we're making their learning task harder. In fact, scientists tell us that signs of dyslexia can be identified as early as 4 years old, maybe even earlier. So waiting until 3rd grade to take a closer look means waiting before intervention can begin. And those are years the child cannot get back. Myth number 11 is that children outgrow dyslexia. This is a myth because dyslexia is lifelong. What changes with effective instruction is how well a person learns to read and manage the challenges that come with dyslexia. Myth number 12 is the one I'm happiest to debunk, and that is the myth that people with dyslexia cannot learn to read and spell. Spelling does typically present a longer challenge, but people with dyslexia certainly can learn to read on grade level, even if their pace isn't as quick as they might want. Teaching children with dyslexia definitely requires more systematic and explicit instruction. But the research is clear that systematic, structured approaches can make a real difference for these students. If you're a classroom teacher watching this and thinking, I wasn't trained for this, I hear you. I wasn't equipped either. But understanding what dyslexia is and what it isn't and debunking those myths is a great place to start. And if you want practical, research-aligned resources to support all your readers, including training about what dyslexia is and isn't, and how to help students with dyslexia, along with the tools to help you do that, you're invited to join my membership, Reach All Readers Plus, where you'll find phonics printables organized by skill, differentiated passages, fluency resources, morphology materials, and so much more, all designed to work alongside whatever program your school requires to reach all your readers. The link is in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.